and welcome to the session dealing with investment and wealth planning for African high net individuals and families. Today we are joined by an esteemed panel of experts, and I will begin by introducing Dr. Namukale Chintu, who is the Senior Director of the EFG Private Bank, Nigeria, but is based in London. Dr. Namukale, with regard to investments for high net individuals, what kind of initiatives or what kind of investments would one expect to find in the age of COVID? So traditionally, there was the normal routes of investment, and people found safe havens in shares, stocks, real estate, cash and other holdings. But obviously this has now changed with the present pandemic, which perhaps will last for another 18 months or so. But in the interim, investment and planning doesn't stop. What are your experiences about clients in the private wealth sector? Where would they be investing?
Thank you, Ashraf. So just to clarify, EFG is one of the largest Swiss private banks, and we have a presence in international financial centers and growth markets. We're headquartered in Zurich with key hubs in London, Hong Kong, and Lugano, and I'm based in London. And we have over 3,000 employees and manage something like 150 billion Swiss francs in assets under management, just to put things into perspective. Now, when you look at the trends, the African trends in comparison to the globe, Capgemini's World Health Report was released last month, and it shows that high net worth population and wealth has increased something like 8% globally. And when you look at Africa, you have had a growth of something like 6%. So you have something like 176,000 high net worth individuals with a combined wealth of 1.7 trillion. And this has grown about 6% since last year. The reason I want to sort of put this into perspective is it puts putting Africa's general population and topics around income aside, it's a very positive trajectory for Africa's growth story, in which more Africans are building wealth on the back of Africa's potential. And so, apart from African source of wealth, we are beginning to see an increase in African wealth internationally. That is wealth accruing to Africans, but not just coming out of Africa, but wealth accumulating elsewhere. And so, of course, the discussions on a lot of the other panels have been real estate, but you want to talk about where this real estate is, but also diversifying across different asset classes. So when you look at Africa specifically, there is a difference between countries that have diversified with long-standing trading relationships and those that are dependent on a narrow set of activities for foreign exchange, because basically this drives the behavior of a lot of families and individual investors. So you may find multi-generational businesses in which families have set up sophisticated structures and family offices to manage their affairs in one extreme. And then you also have those first generation wealth plays, and they're beginning to consider some of the building blocks of a family office. And that is family governance, succession planning, and wealth planning. And this includes estate planning, residence, and immigration considerations. So this is when they're only starting to take into account the fact that they have children who live abroad, or they're about to get married, or their children are about to get married, or their children are very young. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is that over time, first of all, you've been seeing a surge in the number of high net worth individuals coming out of Africa. And at the same time, they are going through various phases of their wealth journey. Some have already set up sophisticated structures, and some are only just starting. So in a post-COVID world, this means that a lot of their strategies are quite diverse depending on the stage in which they're at and the risk profile that they have. What I'm seeing with some of the individuals and families I'm supporting is that there is a barbell approach in which views are polarized. So you've got the bull investors who want to enter the market, given that the market has bottomed out, and want to basically ride that wave. And then you've got those that want to preserve their wealth. That is on the investment side. On the leverage side, their views are equally polarized, with those wanting to borrow more and those not wanting to risk it. Because in this current environment, interest rates are low. And so for some investors, they're saying, I want to borrow and invest in the markets and ride that wave, or borrow and invest in real estate and take advantage of that opportunity. Whereas others are saying, well, actually, I want to sit on cash. So I think it's very important to really take some of those views and some of those polarized views into account. So in a post-COVID world, if you're looking at the more sort of sophisticated investors who have already set up their family structures, some of the things that they are now thinking of are, immigration and residence, and whether it's still fit for purpose. They're thinking about whether their current residence is worth it within this COVID environment, whether it's because of access to healthcare or access to family or travel restrictions or quality of life. So they're already beginning to question some of the structures that they have in place. For some of the investors that are only just starting out, they're asking the more fundamental questions. I want to be able to visit my daughter in the US, or, my son is about to get married and I'm about to hand over my wealth to him via some sort of succession planning arrangement. What does that mean in the midst of COVID? And how do I feel about, my assets where I am presently? Because one of the biggest elephants in the room about all this government spending that all the governments are putting in place is that it's all going to be tied up with debt and increased taxes. And therefore, a lot of families and investors are beginning to think about the tax implications of their current circumstances and whether there is anything that they can do to make them more tax efficient. Now, bearing in mind, as a private bank, we are not tax advisors, and I would leave that to the professionals on this panel to talk about. But they are certainly coming to us saying, are you able to introduce us to immigration advisors and tax advisors, as well as real estate agents, to be able to take advantage of a lot of the trends that are taking place in the market. So I will stop there for now, and if there's an opportunity to come around back to me, I'm happy to talk through our journey that we take our clients through with regards to setting up accounts. But I think the three main things that they're looking at is investment, is leverage, and is residence.
Thank you very much, Namukale. That was a very, very deep and brief insight, I might add, but nevertheless, very, very informative. And I think these kinds of challenges are facing people all over the continent. And your insight via the private banking network is invaluable in this case. And what I'm hearing is there are two challenges, almost three. The first is tax is going to be a challenge facing everyone. The second is the future, whether it's for family reasons or investment. And the third is diversification of wealth in terms of succession planning, etc. So without further ado, because time is of the essence, I'd like to invite Olaniyi to join us. And she's going to be giving us a perspective regarding what we couldn't complete regarding tax compliance, etc., etc. So without further ado, I hand over to Olaniyi for an introduction and for her to cover the topic.
Okay, my name is, thank you so much for the introduction. So my name is Olaniyi and I work with Anderson Tax Nigeria. So basically what we do is to advise high net worths and individuals and even corporate entities on how to be compliant with their tax obligations in Nigeria. And also for those that have assets and income from all over the world, there's global income. We always advise them on how to do to tidy up their books. So basically the tax compliance requirements for individuals in Nigeria is within the ambit of Section 41 of Personal Income Tax Act, which actually stipulates that every individual should file their returns for high net worth by the 31st of March of every year. And this returns is expected to be filed by all individuals, including those who are self-employed, and they should submit their tax returns by way of direct assessment, as well as those who have paid employment who are supposed to file in form of pay as you earn, which is the pay scheme. So ideally, employers are also required by the provisions of Section 81 of the Personal Income Tax Act. They are required to file the returns of all emoluments paid to the employees and taxes deducted and remitted to the relevant tax authorities. So when we discuss issues around the high net worth, they are under the obligation of filing their returns by the 31st of March, since they are self-employed. A lot of them are the employers of labor. So they should file their returns by the 31st of March. And the interesting thing about Nigerian taxes is you are required to file your returns based on your global income and not just an income that you earn for the period or in Nigeria alone. And the typical income of these high net worths could be dividend, it could be rental income, it could be director's fees, salaries, it could be bonuses. It could be contracts from all, from everywhere around the world. It could be money from inheritance, from their investments. All this should be declared in the tax returns that will be filed to the tax authority. And because some of them may have dual citizenship, they are also required to file in other countries. And this brings us to the issue of having we have a lot of high net worth that are interested in having 2 passports or to have dual citizenship because of the kind of investments and the opportunities this brings to them in the nearest future. So what we advocate is that they tidy up their books, both in their home country and the host country. And there are lots of opportunities around investment in offshore countries. I may not be able to specify which country in particular, but of course, it's actually at the detriment or based on the interest of the individuals here. Some may actually earn income from trust, from estates, and from capital gains on sale of assets, or from treasury bills or other instruments that may be termed as non-taxable per the Nigerian tax law. Some may also earn from stock and also from business income. All this must be declared in their tax filings to the Nigerian government. So when you put this, some adage that we always put together, or we often tell high net worth, it's like the best way to actually make your company survive is to ensure that you leave it in the hands of competent people, and that way the competent people may not necessarily be your family members. And I so much appreciate what the doctor said previously about having family governance or having family structure around your business. That way you're leaving it in the hands of someone or people that can take it from where you stopped. So basically, maybe I shouldn't dwell so much on the kind of income and the wealth transfer method now until we get to that level. But what is paramount, or what is most important for the Nigerian tax system, is you should file your returns based on your global income. And the tax planning opportunities are there. We would advise, or professionals would advise you on how to actually structure your business in a way that you don't have multi-layers of taxation. And one income that you earn here is not taxed abroad, or is not overly taxed. You don't have a double tax system or even a multiple tax system. I mean, everything is just done in accordance with what would align with you also, and you don't erode your interest, or your profit is not eroded by this system of taxation.
Oh, thank you. Just as an area of question of clarification for me, what are there any exchange control restrictions in Nigeria? Are they able to export their capital without penalties from the central bank?
Okay, so the Nigerian tax law actually, they're fair enough to say when you earn income and the income is brought into Nigeria, earn income from abroad and brought it to Nigeria through a government approved channel, those income or that income will not be taxable in Nigeria. So you must have been able to go through the right channel of bringing the income into Nigeria. This is just to encourage investments in Nigeria. They want to encourage every individual to bring in their sum or their capital into Nigeria to boost the business in Nigeria. So that way they'll tax implication on that amount brought into Nigeria.
And do they have restrictions in exporting their capital if they have to invest in real estate, for example?
Okay.
Do they have to declare that?
Okay. So for real estate, you can actually earn your income from your rental income from offshore and bring it into Nigeria. It's still the same law that governs that. So far, you bring in those income through a commercial bank or through an approved channel, and CBN is actually going to approve this income flow. They will definitely give you a certificate of capital importation. So once you get that, there are no restrictions to what you bring in, since they are legit. And there's no restriction to how much I'm going to bring. And those assets or those rental income, you have documents to justify the income and where and the source of the income also. So there is no restriction to what Nigeria would allow you bring into Nigeria.
Thank you for that. I think you've highlighted something that Dr. Namukale has also highlighted, which seems to be an emerging theme, very interesting, which is succession planning and how to hand over your successful business to the next generation, not necessarily to your family, but to ensure the income is there to meet the needs of the family. And very interestingly, that you speak of hiring competent people. Perhaps it's time also to look at certain investments that will just run in the background without the need for any policing or any kind of, let's say, serious involvement, such as a share in an offshore entity that perhaps is focusing on real estate. But thank you for that input. We'll come back to further questions later on down the line. Last but not least, I have an attorney, Atiq S. Anjarwalla, and he's based out of Kenya. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to him for his own introduction and for him to cover the topics in that part of the world, because the entire African continent, as we know, is made up of various nations, and some of the challenges down in South Africa, for example, might not be the same challenges that you face further up north. So without further ado, welcome to Atiq.
Thank you, Ashraf, and thank you to BLS for inviting all of us on this for this workshop. Yeah, so as you've explained, I am based out of East Africa, but I also work from our office in Dubai, and my law firm has a presence in 16 countries across the continent. It's called Africa Legal Network, ALN. So we're quite active working with clients across the African continent and also in the UAE. Some of the points that have been raised earlier have resonated with me. And what has happened with my practice is that as I've grown older and had more white hair, a lot of my older clients have asked me the same questions about succession planning, wealth management, and how to pass on wealth to the next generation. As you've also noted, Africa is very fragmented. East Africa tends to be much more liberal than many other countries in Africa. So, for example, if you take Kenya, we don't have an exchange control regime. You can officially hold wealth offshore, as long as obviously it's taxed effectively if it's generated from Kenya. And we don't tax on worldwide income. Okay? Tanzania has a slightly different position. Uganda has a slightly different position. But what we're finding with clients is that they are talking to their private banks, talking to wealth advisors regarding the next generation when it comes to their liquid assets. And we help these clients in terms of structuring their wealth through foundations or trusts and other instruments that would allow, which would allow for longevity. We sit with clients and understand their investment philosophy and work with their bankers to try and ensure that we achieve that in a way that's obviously legally sound, is tax efficient, and would work for them in terms of the long term. We also work with clients, and we find this becoming now a very hot topic in our part of the world, which is basically next generation wealth, both liquid and obviously hard wealth. And what I mean by that is actual businesses. So how do you hand over a business to the next generation? And a lot of the points that my earlier panelists have raised regarding succession planning, corporate governance, what are the best tools required to bring your children back into your business, are all themes that resonate very strongly in East Africa. Most of the wealth in East Africa is not more than 2 generations old. In very few cases you might get 3 generations, but by and large is two generations old. And therefore some of the succession and wealth planning tools that perhaps have been quite well set in the Western jurisdictions are slowly making their way to our part of the world. And clients are obviously also wanting to ensure that as far as possible, their planning is done in a tax efficient way. And having a second passport could be quite handy, or looking at different residence options could be quite handy. We're finding family businesses where you might find one brother, for example, who decides to move to Dubai or decides to get a second passport and leave the local jurisdiction, and he is the one who might control the wealth for the rest of the family. So these are all these different options that are being looked at. And as I said, these are very interesting trends and really a growing business, because a lot of the business people in our part of the world, again, realize that if they're going to have continuity of wealth, if they're going to allow their capital to grow, then they have to have proper structures in place. And which of course means that they need legal advice, tax advice, accounting advice, and obviously good investment advice as well. And that sort of package, if it's packaged well together, obviously allows for the family to have a very good chance of being successful. We're also finding certain families now looking at options of family offices, some of the larger families, and looking at other options that can ensure, as I said, continuity of wealth.
Atiq?
Yes?
Sorry to interrupt there. We just had a slight interruption for about 30 seconds. If I could just ask you to just repeat that, please.
Yes, so as I was saying, we are finding now the families, because of the growth of wealth in East Africa, the need to wealth plan and to manage your wealth, including looking at residency and citizenship options become more and more critical. Families are keen to ensure that there is continuity, and they would look to their professional advisors to try and help them on all the aspects. What they also realize, which I think is a very interesting trend now, is that being organized and having good corporate governance actually means enhanced value. So if you're looking to attract money through a private equity fund or through a trade sale, and you're having a foreign investor, if your business is well organized, and it could be well organized at a local level, it could be well organized through a holding company structure in a tax efficient jurisdiction, all these factors will actually enhance your value. We're also finding, which has been a challenge on the continent in the past in terms of tax compliance, that clients have realized now and fully onboarded the fact that tax compliance is no longer a choice. It's an obligation and a must. And actually that is very healthy because they've also realized that enhances their value. So a lot of work is actually, and positive work is happening in this space, including, as I said, residency and second citizenship. On the second citizenship point, what we have noted is, again, it differs from country to country. So Kenya, for example, formally allows to have 2 nationalities. It's completely legal under our constitution. So people are looking for the second passport option, especially for the younger children, because of the sort of loss of value of some of the African passports. And that clearly is something that is helping them and making their children more mobile. And I think what COVID has done is probably enhance that, because of the ability to be able to take advantage of for example, a European Union passport, which I now see as much more high value than perhaps having a local passport. So I'll stop there, and you can ask the next question, Ashraf.
Oh, thank you very much, Atiq. That was very, very insightful about the situation in East Africa, and we're going to revisit that topic. Back to Dr. Namukale. Are there restrictions in Nigeria for dual citizenship? Just a question that I want to throw out to the panelists now, just generally. It's well known that in some of the Caribbean islands, in terms of estate planning, it is possible that parents over the age of 55 are included in the application. Is it not prudent to invite younger applicants to apply for citizenship by investment, and then you include your parents over the age of 55 so that the application is treated as one full application, which includes single siblings under the age of 30? I mean, that's quite a big offering. So in terms of family planning and in terms of security, you may be able to group the entire family into one application. Would that be something that you would encourage people to look at? Funmi, I'd ask you to respond, because I don't know what's happened to Dr. Namukale. I don't know if she's there, but the picture has disappeared. So, or Atiq, anyone. Funmi, can I ask you to respond, please? Would that be sound advice?
Okay, so, well, I would not hesitate to tell you that I really do not know about the Caribbeans and how immigration is with them. But what I can put out to you is, it doesn't exactly matter who is putting out the application. It could be a child, it could be the parents. It depends on the immigration service in the country and how, because I know in the US, it's always better when the parents applies for the child. It's actually faster. And sometimes, yes, if the child also has affiliations with military or with some form of job, I mean, some things you hold. Well, I would not tell you, I'm conversant with how the Caribbeans work. But what I would tell you is, whatever form of citizenship you want to have, you must be able to evaluate the tax system in that country, because we have some countries that are tax havens that you wouldn't have to sweat to file your taxes there, because you wouldn't think of a double taxation by being a citizen of that country. So Caribbean could be one of them. We have other tax havens also that we advise our high net worth to invest in. But basically, what is important for everyone to know is the wealth of the individual after death, or once he wants to transition to or wants to leave his business, you must be able to hand over appropriately to your successor. And that is the most important thing about whether it's an estate, whether it's a trust, whether or any form of assets that you're leaving in the hands of your successor. You must be able to do it in an efficient way. If the Caribbean law is that a child is faster for a child to apply, or it's faster for the parent to apply, the most important thing is whatever you do in that country, you must prove to them that you are, your wealth or your assets is enough to justify the kind of returns that you're going to bring to their country. And you must also be able to evaluate the tax system in that country, so you don't fall prey of the drawbacks or the tax implications that they have in their own country. So one thing again that I'd like to bring to notice is we advise our clients that you can lock up, you can have so much wealth. Successful families often, they assume that their current harmony, that's their togetherness, will actually perpetuate across the different generations. So you must be able to have a succession planning at place. And each family should put in place strategies that would successfully transfer the family's wealth from one generation to another. And we advise also that you don't let your kids or your family to live in fairyland. You don't assume that everything is interesting out there. Just make them understand and communicate that, communicate how wealth emerged, how you were able to get the wealth, and they must have the vision and they must have the risk-taking abilities, and they must be hardworking enough to go along with the focus or the mission of the family. So whatever country you want to invest, just make sure you invest so much more in your children and in your families, so the legacy can go on, and it doesn't stop there.
Okay, thank you very much. If I may just add a rider to the question, which might be important to advising clients for citizenship by investment. The first is there is no trust or company. It's in your personal name. So the citizenship, obviously, the passport is in the person's name. So you're not getting away from that. It's a natural person.
Yeah.
The second is very interesting is a lot of these Caribbean islands are very generous with their tax laws. So when you invest in citizenship by investment, not only do you get a second passport, but only the income generated from that particular unit is ring-fenced for taxation purposes. And that income is a trickle down. It's very, very minimal, maybe 1 or 2% per annum from rental income. So again, it's very easy to manage back home in your tax jurisdiction, and as well as where the passport is or where the investment is. So it could be very, very prudent to look into some of these. The third, very, very important in terms of the COVID pandemic, which I as an immigration lawyer in South Africa have faced repeatedly. I've had to litigate against our Department of Home Affairs for various clients because they were not allowed back in for various reasons. Now, remember, in the pandemic, the governments went about protecting their citizen, and the citizen is that passport holder. So dual citizens were allowed to return to the Republic or exit the Republic, but that was prejudicial to everyone else. So there's a great advantage in looking at a second passport for various reasons. Maybe it's investment in the States, which is the largest market. Maybe you want to expand your business into the US. Maybe you need to travel visa-free into the EU, Schengen, and Russia. So very important for business people to consider a second passport. But Dr. Namukale, I wanted to just cover the aspect of encouraging HNIs to look at seriously one of the non-traditional areas of succession and wealth planning, which is specifically by investing in a second passport like in the Caribbean. Would you see that as a sound idea, Dr. Namukale?
Yes, absolutely. I was interested in listening to all your arguments, and one of the things that struck me is that we're always sort of talking to investors coming out of Africa who have an African passport to do a citizenship by investment. However, it's also very important to establish that sometimes clients already have a British passport. So you might want to look at the citizenship by investment for different reasons. You might want to look at the return on that investment and essentially how that plays out in their overall portfolio, because a client may very well want to invest in the Caribbean, but also invest in the UK. I'm quite conscious of the fact that we are running out of time, but I'll stop there for now. Is even if you do have a British passport, do consider the investment return coming out of the Caribbean, because you may get some returns, if not the benefits from the citizenship.
Thank you very much, Dr. Namukale. Atiq, I'm just handing over to you for your final comments on this before we end.
Thank you, Ashraf. So, all I would say, all I would advise is that clearly citizenship is a useful tool. Gives you a lot of further mobility, especially if you're from Africa. And I think it has to be looked at through the lens of an overall succession and estate planning as well. And I'll end there.
Thank you very much. We've run out of time. I just want to take a minute to thank each of you personally. It was a very, very interesting and insightful conversation. I wish we can have more of this. I hope that our viewers will benefit from this and they could direct questions to all of you in the future. Keep up the good work, investment, looking after family businesses. Security is very important. In a changing world, nothing is like it used to be. So let's always look for the new opportunity that comes around. Thank you very much, one and all, and take care.